Good morning. I'm Greg Cooley, a teacher here at First United Methodist Church in Corinth, Mississippi. I hope you're doing well, and we're glad to have you with us today. How do we relate to God? Well, we've been looking at that question for the last 2 or 3 weeks. We said that if we relate well to God, we will love Him. And we spent a little time talking about how to truly love God. And if we relate well to God, we will respect Him, and how we do that. But today we're going to take it one step further. We're going to, yes, love God if we relate well to Him. We're going to respect God, yes, but we're also going to be devoted to God. Now, the definition of devotion in this case is to have a consistent enthusiasm for the cause. I'm devoted. If you're a devoted soldier, if you're a devoted husband, if you're a devoted mother, you will have enthusiasm for consistently being there so that you will, not be questioned as to whether you're really into it. And our relationship to God requires that we are in it, that we are totally in it, that we are devoted. So what is it to be devoted to God? 3 or 4 examples from the Scriptures should help us understand that. First, when I'm devoted to God, as we've talked in the past, I do the right thing. I let God influence me. I let His Scriptures influence me. I let His Spirit influence me in every situation. An example from the Scriptures of someone who did not do this well would be David. So there's David alone because everybody else is out fighting the war. There's David alone at night on the balcony, and what did he see? Oh, a lady bathing. Now, we're probably going to be able to ask her one day when we all get to heaven, Bathsheba, did you do this on purpose? Did you know the time of the evening when David took his evening strolls? The Scripture indicates to us that she did. So they were both involved in this. But you know, David didn't have to send for her, did he? But he did, and the rest is history. David didn't control himself. Now, he could probably have rationalized himself and his way through this. Oh, she's alone. I'm alone. Her husband's away. She's lonely. I'm a mighty strong king and she needs support. He didn't have to send for her, did he? But he did. David didn't do the right thing. Who did the right thing from our look at history and also the Bible? How about Joseph? You know, the guy with the coat of many colors who was sold into slavery by his brothers? So he gets to the new country, Egypt, and he gets a job. He works for Potiphar. And Potiphar is a very, very powerful man and has a wife who is a conniving lady. And she decides that she likes this young Joseph. Oh, he's young, he's good looking, he's hard working. And there she is, alone. Do we see maybe a consistency here? Sometimes when we're tempted, we're alone. Sometimes when we're tempted, we don't have a support system around us. Sometimes when we're tempted, we really don't see ourselves doing anything wrong, do we? Because it seems to just be a natural reaction. But sometimes doing the right thing is not a natural thing. It's something that we have to will ourselves through. And here was Joseph, the wife of the powerful boss, coming on to him to the point that she laid her hands on him and he had to leave his coat with her. Joseph did the right thing, even though it didn't seem to work out well for him, did it? He ended up in prison. But he continued to do the right thing. Doing the right thing is not always easy. Doing the right thing is not always convenient. But doing the right thing is required of you and me if we're devoted to God. Number one, if I'm devoted, I'm going to try to do the right thing. Number two, if I'm devoted, I'm going to try to control myself. Yes, we could go back to these two examples, David and Joseph, and doubly convince ourselves that not only did they not or do the right thing, but that they could be examples of controlling ourselves, because controlling ourselves and doing the right thing go hand in hand, don't they? But I can also give you other examples from the Scripture. David again didn't do the right thing, not just with Bathsheba, but as a follow-up. Two wrongs don't make a right, but David wasn't convinced of that because he was the king. And so therefore, when the husband comes back to town, that we're going to have an issue, aren't we? So let's just get rid of him. David did not do the right thing, nor did he control himself. But who control themselves in the Bible? Jesus. Garden of Gethsemane. The heat is on. He knows what's coming. He starts to sweat. Great drops of blood. He's alone. And he prays to his Father, if it be your will, let this thing pass from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. Jesus controlled himself. What an example. Can you imagine the pressure? Can you imagine the stress? Not just the stress of maybe guilt that Jesus could have had, but he didn't. He had the stress of all of our guilt on him. And he didn't back out. Oh, he could have called 10,000 angels. He could have set himself free, but he didn't. He controlled himself. Why? Because he was devoted to the cause. He was devoted to the plan. He was devoted to the Father. A great example for you and me. So if we're going to be people of devotion, we should do the right thing. We should control ourselves, and we should work diligently in the kingdom. Work diligently. Who can we see from Scripture who worked diligently? Well, Paul, especially in the book of Colossians, tells us this. He specifically tells us in Colossians chapter 3 and verse 23 and 24, work diligently in whatever you do, as if you're working directly for God. That would change my attitude about the work of the church or the work of the kingdom, wouldn't it? Work diligently. Not work in a whining manner. Not work just to get it off the plate. Not work just to make the pastor happy. Not work just to make your wife or husband happy, but work because you're called to it and you're devoted. And you do it as if you know you're working directly for God. Because you are. We are, aren't we? When He calls us to something good, when He calls us to do something for someone else, when His Word calls us to do, we do. We follow through. We work diligently. We don't just work, but we work unto Him. That's what the book of Colossians tells us. That's what Paul did. Paul, he speaks with authority when he tells us to work diligently and work as if we're working directly for God, because that's what he did. You know how many missionary journeys he went on? Have you ever read that litany of things that Paul went through? How many times he was shipwrecked, and how many times he was bitten, how many times he was beaten, how many times he was hurt? The snakes. I mean, can you imagine? Do you forget those things about Paul? Do we forget that he was challenged? Do we forget that he had a thorn in his flesh? And he continued diligently. So if I'm devoted to God, I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to work diligently, and I'm going to absolutely control myself as much as I can. And lastly, if I'm devoted to God, I'm going to give thanks with my heart, soul, mind, and strength. I give Him thanks for the calling I have. I give Him thanks for the direction I have. I give Him thanks for the strength I have. I give Him thanks for the opportunities I have. I don't try to get out of the calling. I don't try to get out of the issues. I don't try to hide in the back of the room hoping that the teacher won't call on me. No. I give thanks as unto the Lord, and Job is a great example of that. Remember Job? Remember the challenges Job had? He had everything, and then he had nothing. He had riches, and then he had nothing. He had a family, and then he didn't. He had his health, and then he didn't. He sat there to the point that his friends came supposedly to try to encourage him, but they ended up laughing at him and scoffing. And there Job sat. Job chapter 13 and verse 15, Job says this, "Though he slay me, I will continue to hope and trust in him." Though he slay me, I will continue to hope and trust. I will give him praise with my life to the very last breath. And if he chooses to take me, so be it. Because I did it in his service. And I'm thankful for the call. I'm giving thanks all the way to my last breath. So, if I'm devoted to God, and what was the definition of that devotion? Consistently being enthusiastic for the cause. Consistently enthusiastic for the cause. Folks, that means daily. Every day, every moment, His Spirit helps me be devoted so that I can do the right thing and work diligently and control myself and give thanks. God bless you. I hope you will see an opportunity this week to be devoted. And I hope others will see devotion to the cause in you. And we look forward to spending another moment with you next week right here. God bless you.